They said it was impossible. They said, you can't put together the most elite team of comic book reviewers on the planet and do, a podcast or something like that? Despite all that, today we can proudly announce. Yeah, they were right. We couldn't do it. So instead, we brought you the most vile, ignorant, unprofessional group of comic book enthusiasts we could find. This is Panel to Panel, the Game Rage Magazine comic podcast.
Still gonna do it anyways because it's funny as fuck. Yeah, it is funny as fuck, and you should do it. And if you want to hear what we're talking about, we're not going to do it on Panel to Panel, so you're going to have to tune in to Chirpin' from the Pine, the Game Rage Sports podcast, where you can hear what the fuck we're talking about.
True story.
But this is Panel to Panel. I'm Josh. He's Adam. And if you like our Game Rage Magazine stuff, you can go to our website at GameRageMagazine.com where you can see all of our podcasts and all the content we have available. Excuse me. You can follow us on at Game Rage Magazine, Instagram and TikTok, where you can watch us argue with idiots on the internet and rile them up on social media. If you like Twitter/X at Game Rage Mag, All Gas No Trash Official on Instagram for Adam. Also check out the All Gas No Trash Official podcast, which is conveniently located at GameRageMagazine.com and wherever podcasts are sold. But
sold, as if you could purchase a podcast.
Yeah, that's...
I know, I get it. I fucking hate it.
Thanks for fucking ruining the great joke that is.
I don't know how great it is.
It's the infomercial thing from the 90s. You can get it wherever forks are sold. It's like they're selling fucking forks or you can get it here or wherever forks are sold. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. Okay, boomer.
Okay, boomer.
Jesus Christ. Anyways, today, locking it up with the Immortal Hulk numero dos. So, whoops. Let's get after it. Wait. Oh, it's in the fucking this window. I think it opens it up in. Yeah, there it is. All right. Immortal Hulk number 2. Look at this cover. This is what we got at the ending for like the preview of the last issue. And I kind of think that's how this goes. They show you essentially the cover of the next issue as like the preview. Is that what they're doing?
Well, I mean, they do that with every comic.
They do that with every comic?
Yeah, most comics.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Let me turn it to all pages so that we can actually... There we go. I'll zoom in on it.
Yes, we open with this cover done by Alex Ross, who pretty much does every cover from issue 1 to issue 50. It is assuming this is the next villain that Bruce Banner is going to encounter, and there's some type of cave, and this radioactive man is fucking attacking Bruce Banner. And in a very cool way, they have the Hulk just under the surface of water, and he's got his arm poking out, and just very cool stuff.
Indeed.
And we open with this this quote from the Bible that says that all that a man hath will he give for his life. Job 2:4.
Indeed. And then we open up with.
I have notes, or did you want to?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Did you want to?
No, go ahead. You do it. You got the notes. Go ahead. Go for it.
All right. So, possible flashback scenario to just after Bruce Banner had experienced this exposure to radiation from the bomb that went off that provoked his turning into the Hulk, and breaks out in a cold sweat and says he has fears about the radiation that should have killed literally anybody. And he starts talking about this walking ghost effect that you experience some type of significant event that should probably kill you, and you walk around like you're fine, and then eventually you die. And he has like this Geiger counter that he sees or has around him to basically measure his radiation. And like every time he sees it go off, like he starts getting fucking mad. He gets into a rage mode. And Bruce has been having this dream in multiple nights. He thinks he should stop sleeping at night because he believes that the night is the Hulk's time. So kind of introduced to this idea that the Hulk usually comes out at night for this specific comic. So Bruce ends up going on a bus that he's just on this bus, and he needs to get off because something is provoking him. He's like, fuck, I need to get out of here before I end up flipping out because I'm starting to get fucking agitated. So he's, as it's noted in the comic itself in his internal monologue, he's like saying, I'm getting this fucking itch and it's making me uncomfortable. And if I don't get out of here, I'm going to start some shit.
I'm going to fucking Hulk out, literally.
So then we get into the Hulk, or rather Bruce Banner, talking about how his life is very fucking simple. He basically has the clothes on his back, a few dollars, and basically a transient at this point, having just come back to life in this particular comic. And all he has are the basic pleasures of life, which is enjoying, for him in this particular comic, this particular issue, he's enjoying a typical American breakfast with like fucking eggs and bacon. And he's just talking about how savory this breakfast that he's having is just fulfilling him as a human being. So then he gets into like this whole existential thing that his therapist, Leonard Sampson, and he says Sampson would have been questioning Bruce as a sensual being because he's a scientist, and he doesn't typically portray human emotions and shit, except when he rages out and becomes the Hulk.
Yeah.
And he starts talking about this. Let's see. Lost my place. So Bruce is going on this monologue about the senses being a function of the ego, that the conscious focuses on physical stimuli, all part of science. And then he concludes that therefore the subconscious mind is the repressed mind in the domain of the intuition, the unscientific thought, mysticism, magical thinking, hunches, or gut feelings. So, getting a little existential, I suppose, in that little monologue that he goes on. And Bruce is talking about, he eventually starts talking within his own mind about his wife, Betty, and Samson. Like, do they even fucking know I'm alive since I've been back? Because other than people in Arizona who the news reporter had come to this situation and is potentially going to be reporting about the Hulk now reappearing and his existence coming to fruition again. So Bruce poses that he's going to end up using the Hulk to atone for the mistakes that he's made in the past. And Jackie, who's the reporter that we had learned about in issue 1, is reporting about the Hulk himself in the newspaper. So he's not going to be under wraps for long. Like, his exposure is going to be known to the entire United States and eventually the whole world. But right now it's exclusively local to Arizona, wherever the fuck he is in Arizona.
Yeah.
So Bruce, who ends up seeing this newspaper specifically for Taronga, which I imagine some city in Arizona. So he reads like this headline about some mayor talking about the number of deaths that have been going on within the city itself. And he's like, oh, fuck. All right, let me get to that city and see what's going about. And eventually he makes his way to a bar, and he's just kind of like having a drink and trying to gather intel. And he's talking to the barkeep, and he's trying to figure out what's going on with this situation with like the numerous deaths that have been happening in the area. And the barkeep is like kind of in denial about what's happening. She's like, oh yeah, it's just a statistical thing. And then this war vet or whoever this fucking guy is at the end of the bar is just he's got his own suspicions. And he says that there's this thing been going around that people have been dying, and when the loved ones end up burying these people, that the loved ones die too. And he believes it's like a chain of sickness or grief. And he thinks that ground zero or patient zero was this guy named Del Fry, who was like this football stud that the barkeep knew of, and basically had it made. Like he was the star quarterback, he was prom king, he was all these things. And he eventually died of an embolism or something. And according to her, this was like a good kid. He was humble and everything. And Bruce eventually finds out that the father was some famous guy that had worked on some type of cancer treatment. And that's how he was so rich, and how the son of this kid, Del Fry, like he was in good fortune to be his son or whatever. Yeah.
I want to say, I think it's funny, like in this panel where they're sitting at the bar and it shows like the shot of the bar and the bartender here. Instead of Heineken, they have Neineken.
Neineken, yeah.
That's fucking so great, man. I think that's hilarious.
Can't get sued.
Nope. Fucking excellent.
So Bruce is gathering information, and he's like suspicious and intrigued now by what's going on with some of the exposition drop that has come about. And Bruce is recapping on why he ended up dying, because he wanted to find out if he was capable of dying. But if I remember correctly, this was like during the whole Civil War II event that he ended up getting shot with an arrow, which I'm presuming is alluding to Hawkeye, that he was shot with this specific arrow to basically kill him. And that's why he was gone for a hot minute. So lore drop on why the Hulk has returned and how he once died. But so Bruce is like walking through the forest and or this road that eventually leads to like a forested area, which is like some type of cemetery. And Bruce is talking about how, like, now that he's back, he still retains a lot of who he was in the past. He's still a genius and is creative and all this stuff, but he feels like he's lacking in some areas. And he actually thinks that the Hulk is smarter than him. And eventually we're led to the grave of Del Fry, who was the star quarterback that we learned about in the previous pages and from the bar scene. And Bruce detects gamma radiation at the gravesite, and he comes to the conclusion that everybody has been developing acute radiation poisoning. And Bruce is like, fuck, man, I better call the EPA, because if people keep visiting the site, like, a lot of people are going to die. And he's like, fuck, I'm going to call the EPA. And he is surmising that the Hulk has basically been his north compass, or his true north, because the gamma radiation from the site drew him to that location. So the Hulk has been like tipping him off to get to this spot. And then Bruce is like telling the EPA, like, hey, we have a fucking emergency situation. You need to fucking be here. And he's like, the only way I can convince these people to come here is if I tell them I'm Bruce Banner, because otherwise, like, they would just say, fuck off. Like, who the fuck are you to tell? Like, if we're having a radiological emergency. So Bruce moves on from the phone booth that he was at. He's like, fuck, I gotta get on the move. I gotta fucking, I don't want to draw more attention to myself, so I'm going to get moving. And he makes his way to a cave that is like emitting gamma radiation. And Bruce finds Dr. Fry, and there's like a number of bodies that are just fucking laid out everywhere. Anybody that gets close to this Dr. Fry, who is the father of Del Fry, is basically dying from acute radiation poisoning. And in the midst of this, Bruce is like reaffirming that, yes, it is possible for me to die, but the fucking Hulk, he can't. Like, he's just basically immortal. And the Hulk emerges and begins questioning Dr. Fry. And Dr. Fry is like, dude, I've been afraid of death. Like, and we get a little bit of exposition of why that is. Like, his wife died in the past, and that provoked this fear of death. So he is like kind of terrified of the idea of death because it's just like the absence of being, all the joys, all the senses that we experience as humans, like the memories, it's just all fucking gone. And this Dr. Fry ended up using Bruce as an inspiration. He used Bruce Banner as hope and inspiration for his own scientific research and stuff. So he ultimately creates a cancer treatment that hadn't been done before. And then he also uses like gamma radiation on the side to experiment with, to basically become immortal himself. And, for a time it actually was working. He injects himself and he feels like he's 10 years younger, and he has like this gamma healing factor with no side effects. So he's like, shit, maybe I can use it on my son to prevent him from getting more injuries, or just to protect him from getting concussions and all this shit. And Del Fry gets injected with this like serum that he is given by his father. And Del Fry ends up going into like this weird supernatural catatonic state. And he's basically telling his father, there's a green door and there's something looking through it. And eventually his eyes just explode with green goo, possibly like a combination of gamma radiation plus blood or whatever. And he eventually fucking dies. And he's like, fuck, man. The one thing I wanted to do was avoid death, and I ended up killing my own fucking son. And as I was saying, his son eventually dies, and Dr. Fry destroys all his research, and he himself ends up beginning to change from the gamma radiation, and his whole body is like basically decomposing. So Hulk pieces together that Dr. Fry ran off, and anybody that ends up getting close to him, he basically kills just because they get in proximity to him. So he's hiding out in this cave. And then Hulk points out that this guy's radiation has basically given him his own ghost phase, his own walking ghost phase. And Hulk points out the irony that Dr. Fry, being afraid of death, ends up becoming it, which was kind of very like funny in a dark manner.
Yeah.
So then the EPA arrives at the grave, and Hulk mentions that people that were going to grieve this kid end up developing acute radiation poisoning. And then Hulk is like, all right, man, like, fucking be straight with me. I know a liar when I see it. What's the deal? Like, how many people did you fucking kill? And the guy's like, he can't even tell him what the fuck, the number of people that he's killed. So then Hulk ends up ripping his fucking limbs off, and he's like, you made this bed, now you must fucking lie in it. So he buries him like, who the fuck knows how many feet down under in this cave. Let's say it's like, anywhere between like 30 to 100 feet or something. And this guy's like, oh my God, I wish I could fucking die. I'm buried way deep in this cave. This is a fate worse than death. And eventually the radiation team from like the EPA digs up the body, and Del Fry is like sticking out his arms. I don't know if he's actually alive or dead, but he's radioactive himself. And that's how the issue ends.
Radioactive as fuck. And then we get this picture, which like I said, is going to be the next cover, of Hulk with a giant fucking hole in the middle of his chest, and then looking through the hole is I don't know who the fuck that is.
Yeah, I don't remember who that person is.
But Yeah, so that'll be the next issue. This was funny because, or not, well, I mean, it was funny, but like, what an asshole. You're going to give your son the ultimate performance enhancing drug to go play professional sports? Like, what a piece of shit. An undetectable steroid, essentially, with no gamma fucking level radioactive healing factor, with no detectability whatsoever. No side effects, but then except instant death apparently for this kid.
Yeah, and it's weird hearing the Hulk using this his alter ego as a means to atone for his mistakes, when it's like, who the fuck is he to basically be the hand of justice? But I suppose based on this encounter that he's like, I know gamma radiation and I know what it's capable of. And in other people's hands, it's actually worse. Or we have this particular situation where gamma radiation ended up killing a number of people. And here we have the Hulk to right the wrongs of this motherfucker who ended up taking gamma radiation in his own research and caused a number of people to die. So it's very Twilight Zone, where within these last two issues, it's definitely been like horror themed, and it's also been that sense of irony within like a Twilight episode that somebody was trying to avoid something or trying to do something, and they end up getting like a monkey's paw situation. And I of the two issues within the two issues that we read of the Immortal Hulk, I really fucking like this one, especially when it's concentrated on like kind of like a monster of the week type of situation.
Yeah.
And it kind of gives a spotlight to a character or a villain that is not like the big hitters or whatever. It's just a small local story about a guy that took gamma radiation too far, and now the Hulk has to set things right to
this is like a baddie of the week fucking scenario here, where we're getting that, but it's not, like you said, it's not the big bad has not been. I don't know if there is going to be one, but I mean, they're not introduced yet. He's going around just kind of doing small time fucking local hero stuff, I guess, or whatever, for lack of a better term. Righting the wrongs in small town USA.
Yeah.
And obviously they're all radiation fucking related or something, but it's just funny. Like,
yeah, and I think it does have that familiarity with like the original Hulk show with Lou Ferrigno. That he would just go from town to town and shit. So it even has an air of the old show with Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah, and it was funny because when they were sitting in the diner and they were eating, or he was eating, I was like, man, I wonder what how many calories a day does the fucking Hulk need to eat, right? So I looked it up because I was just curious if there was an answer. And basically, if you do it, like it's you can't equate it, but let's say if you just use the normal human shit, he's 8 feet tall, weighs like 1,400 pounds. He would need like 30,000 calories a day just to like be alive, to function. And so it was like, I think 30,000 calories is like 23 or 24 Big Mac fucking combo meals with the fry, the soda, and a Coke, basically.
Yeah.
And I was like, damn, bro, fucking Hulk, go to fucking McDonald's and order 3 Big Mac combos and just smash that shit. Because it's weird, because I mean, and maybe this is stupid, but I mean, you see as a character, you never really see him like eat like that. I mean, granted, when he was in the Thor movie, he like, you saw him eating like fruit or some bullshit because he was like, he's whatever, he was being pouty or whatever he was doing in that movie. But you never really think about that, about, oh man, like what the fuck does the Hulk eat to stay alive? Because I mean,
and also he's been dead for a hot minute, so to enjoy human pleasures once more.
Yeah.
Like he hasn't eaten food in a hot minute. So even eating food is something that is a new experience. And also it served a plot purpose in talking about how like life itself, to eat food is like a cause and effect thing. Like I have to eat because I need to live,
right?
But I also take pleasure in it, and you can measure those things because they're stimuli, and it satiates you. But then he starts talking about like the illogical aspects of what's happening within like this story about the unscientific mind, the intuition, getting gut feelings.
Yeah.
That the Hulk is that part of him that was able to guide him to this villain for this particular issue. So we're being thrown into this idea about the logical mind and also the unscientific mind. There's a supernatural element and there's a scientific element. Bruce Banner is the science, and then Hulk is everything else, the supernatural, the strange, the weird, all that shit.
Yeah, exactly.
So overall, I have to say I enjoyed, I thought it was a good bit of fun to read this particular issue, and I'm enjoying the good times that is the Immortal Hulk.
Yeah, me too. I mean, this comic is fucking great. I mean, you kind of were telling me like before we started it that, oh, like it's the Hulk going around, and then like he gets to some crazy like Dante's Inferno shit.
It does, yeah, it escalates to that.
And it's cool to see like, oh man, he's starting out like very, very small, and then to know that that's something like that esque is eventually coming is fucking cool. I'm excited to see where it continues to go.
Yeah, so. And I do like, I mean, and I don't, not every case, but at least for this one, to open with a quote that ties into the story itself about this particular verse from Job 4 or 2:4 or 4:2, I can't remember.
Yeah.
About man will give everything for life itself.
Yeah.
And which is kind of like talking about the tribulations that Job experienced about, well, he eventually loses his family. Like he does everything to please God and all this shit, but even he himself succumbs to whatever trials God puts on him. And speaking to the father, Dr. Fry, like he's trying to prevent that situation where his immediate family, he doesn't want any of them to die, or he himself doesn't want to die either. And yeah, just kind of cool to see the intro quote kind of play a role for the issue itself.
Yeah, exactly. So that was cool. And then that story is fucked up on Job, man. Like that's fucked up, that whole story. It's like, oh, hey, God and the devil made a bet that oh yeah, I could fucking get this guy to like to blaspheme or whatever. And then he does everything he asks, and then in the end he's still like, okay, yeah, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, dude, I don't fucking not to go on a whole
not to go on a
rant of Christianity itself, but talking about an authority figure or a figure of superiority, it is rather strange that God needed to prove a point and make somebody else an example just to say that look at these peons that worship me. They will do exactly what why? You already know that's what they're here for, to praise you and for them to enjoy their lives. But you have to put somebody else, you have to get somebody to be an example to prove to some other asshole that to make a point. Like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. That's terrible.
I don't know. Like, anyways, besides the point.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was good. You got anything else to say?
No, I mean, shit. Right, cool. Tune in for the next episode. We will be reading Immortal Hulk #3, and then we're immediately afterwards we're jumping into Daredevil #2.
We're gonna do Daredevil #2 next. So hell yeah. So, anyways, if you enjoy all of these things, you can go to GameRageMagazine.com and you can hear our multitudes of podcasts. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Game Rage Magazine, or Twitter/X at Game Rage Mag. Adam's at All Gas No Trash Official, and you should listen to his musical podcast that we do, and it's conveniently located on all the Game Rage Magazine stuff. All Gas No Trash. Anyways, that's a good one. We'll catch you on the next one.
That was Panel to Panel, the Game Rage Magazine comic book podcast. Thanks for listening. If you want to know more and follow along, go to Instagram and TikTok. Follow at Game Rage Magazine. If you want to follow on Twitter/X at Game Rage Mag. Tune in next time.